historically, there was an assumption that if you just go to college, your skills will be aligned with what employers are demanding. And I think after the pandemic hit and it forced not only colleges, but 1.5 billion learners to go online, it accelerated not only the format of training going online and schedule like from a part-time and a full-time, but also the the other types of options that people have, making sure that it's not only aligned with the skills that employers are demanding, but also making sure that the format of the format of the training is in a shorter amount of time so that you can actually get into the job faster than normal so that once you're in, you're able to keep pace with what's going on.
And so I will toss this to you first, Ruben. Can you talk about the need for tech proficiency? I mean, we've been having this conversation about tech skills needing to be had earlier in people's lives, just like kind of like a foreign language. We should be teaching kids tech skills. But in the world of AI prevalence, can you talk about why tech skills are necessary?
Yeah, I think that this is in probably one of the most exciting times in history where I think technology is creating new roles that never existed before, which increases the demand and the need for not only education, but also education that can train you at a rapid rate. And what's more important than just education that can train you in less than a year, you need a community, right? You and I have known each other for a long time. And so it's important to have a network of people that can not only help you understand how to apply that training to either your day-to-day work or whatever you're trying to create, but also people that can help you actually get into those spaces that you're going to need either to get a job or to raise funding or things like that. And so I think that what's awesome about this moment outside of jobs and entrepreneurship is if you have an opinion or a vision for what you want to see in the world, you have the opportunity to actually make those dreams into a reality.
Rochelle, let's narrow this in. Why should Black people be a focus? Like, where is the gap that says, we need to do more to onboard Black people to technical proficiency?
So, if you look at the current representation of the Black community in tech, whether it's in big tech or whether it's in tech entrepreneurship, or and more specifically in technical roles within the tech ecosystem, the numbers are dismal. It's low. And so when you think about innovation that is coming out of tech and it impacting our everyday lives. It's problem solving for our communities and for the rest of the world. It is imperative the black that the black imagination, that the black design and architecture of solutions is present and prevalent. And so it is important to make sure that we are looking specifically at the black community that has been so traditionally marginalized within this country and as well as around the world. And so I think that when you start problem solving for the black community, you actually are problem solving for so many other communities that are underrepresented or have had their fair opportunity. And so I think that that is where we want to start, and that's where we want to focus in, and making sure that innovation is there. And what I always say is that the black community, whatever we touch turns to gold, right? So when we touch music, when we touch the arts, right? When we touch anything, it turns to gold. So when we touch technology, all pieces of the tech ecosystem, it's gonna turn to gold, which means that the tech ecosystem hasn't even seen its full potential because the Black community has not been at the helm of building and designing our technology.
Yeah, I want both of you to chime in on this, but I'll start with you, Rochelle. Historically, we've had these conversations about particularly young people and specifically young Black people have not always seen that there's an opportunity for them in technology, and they consume at by and large. We're the highest consumers of social media and et cetera, and we don't always realize that there's somebody on the other side building it. And is that changing? I'll start with you, Michelle, but I'd like both of you to chime in.
Is it changing? I want to say yes. Is it changing fast enough? No. Right? Like I think that the goal is for not only for young people, right? Because I think that in our society we're always zoning in on the young person. It's not about age. It's about will, it's about desire, right? It's about somebody's hunger and curiosity. And so I think that Black people in general, we are consumers. And so we need to understand that not only do can we consume, but we can actually build in design. And so I don't think it's happening rapidly enough because I think there's an exposure gap, right? So in the academic setting, we talk about the achievement gap. In the Black community, there is the exposure gap. You can't be what you can't see. And so many of us we don't see ourselves in technology because one, there's just not a lot of us. But indeed, we also can't imagine ourselves there, right? Like it took me a long time, and I'm working in tech to be like, so what does a software engineer
Yeah.
do? Like, or what does an AI engineer do? And like, so we have to spark that imagination in people to first understand what are the opportunities and then be able to see themselves in those opportunities and to see other people in those opportunities. And so and like you said, like get curious about like how is this being built? Who is designing this? Like who's behind, and not just social media, but everything we touch is technology, right? Listening to this podcast, right? Like who's behind the engineering of making sure that this shows up on our screens or shows up in our ears. And so I it's happening, right? Because there are amazing Black people who are doing dope work already, but it's not happening at the rate that we want to see. That is so it's truly um, globe changing.
Yeah, man, I love the way you frame the question um, from a consumption perspective because we are seeing a transition from being consumers to producers. That's happening. It's active. We're seeing the numbers change, but by and large, our community is consumers. With that said, we love being at the forefront of things. We like, I got that new. I like that late. I got the latest. You ain't seen this before. So we like to be at the forefront of things and we like getting access to these things. And even if we're exposed to the roles that exist and we see people that are in these positions and how to get there, the playbook isn't fully established, right? You need to know more than just the education program in order to get there. It's kind of like having access to a basketball court or a field or like material. Like you can, that's like the training programs. You can get access to that, but that still doesn't get you into NBA, right? There's like a lot of other pieces that are involved other than just education, which is why the community and the scouts and all these other things are really important to understand. Um, and I think what Rochelle said about the pace matters, where like the things are happening slowly, but I would also add a piece about like it's not happening as fast as we want it to be, but it's not happening as fast as it needs to be. Because even if we want it to be faster or slower, the truth is and the reality is if we don't change, we're gonna be left behind. That's the facts.
So, what stands in the way of speed in that regard? What obstacles are still
Mhm.
present?
Um, So I think like one of the things that's important to understand is that, when you think about like the cycle, you have to know what are the career paths. You need to know what are the skills that are required to get into the career path. You need to find the training programs that get you into that type of resource. You got to understand how to finance it. You have to, once you understand how to finance it, you have to figure out which one is adaptable to your learning style. When you are enrolled to something that's adaptable to your learning style or your preference, you have to figure out how to complete the program. There's a lot of people that start things that don't finish it. And it's not because you're not motivated. Maybe something happened in your personal life, or you haven't figured out the right schedule. You can't go to school full time because you got to drop somebody off at daycare. And even when you complete the program, the hardest part for most people is actually not the education or the training, it's the job search. And the reason why the job search is so hard is because career navigation isn't about education. Career navigation is about psychology. And the job search is like a sales process where the majority of your results are going to come from a small percentage of your efforts, which means that you are going to get rejected probably from most companies or schools that you apply to, and you have to be willing to push through that change and through those potential doubts that you have about yourself in order to understand that rejection is just redirection towards the destiny that you were supposed to go towards. And then once you're in, then you got to figure out how to stay in, and then repeat the cycle again to continue growing your career. So like that's essentially the career continuum. And because of technology, the the option of pass is growing exponentially. So it's kind of like what Jay-Z said around like there's like a million ways to do it. Choose one, right? Where it's like it's not just about college, it's not just about boot camps, it's not even just about Google career certificates. There are all kinds of training programs that exist that might even be taught by an individual on YouTube, and you don't know where to pick, and you could just get caught in this paralysis by analysis.
Yeah, I would add to that that uh, what comes to mind is Beyonce is, okay, people, let's get information, right? And so I think that one, you expedite things when everybody's in formation, right? And so I think that that's important, right? How do we get our community information? So I think that when you look at certain spaces, whether it's an Afrotech or a career karma or a tech equity collective, it's getting information, but it's also getting information, right? Is that we traditionally, our community has just been um the information trickles down to us slower. And so I think what also comes in is how we receive information, right? Sometimes it's not designed for us, it's not curated for us, it's not in a language that we understand. And not to say because we speak multiple languages, so not trying to
Yeah, I
say
get
we
it.
don't
I get
understand
it.
it. But I think it's important that it's like this was built for me, by me, with me in mind, designed by me, people like me, thinking about my lived experience. And so I think that when you get your community information, you get your community the information, and you curate that specifically for the community, it's going to help expedite things, right? Because I think a lot of us, and what Ruben was saying, what I also think about is the paradox of options, right? When all these options are in front of us, sometimes it's hard to like make a move, and so we're at a pause. But when you have something that is synthesizing information, that's giving you the community that you need, and it was built for you in mind, it's quicker to be like, all right, cool, let me make some moves. And so I think that that's important.
So Ruben,
Sorry,
go ahead.
that information line was brutal. Sorry, that you gotta call that out. That was hard.
Let's snap on
Yeah,
that. Snap on
it's like shout out to the team.
that. So Ruben hit me via text a couple weeks ago. I was like, "Yo, we're working on something, Google initiative, and we got to talk about this." So I'm like, say less. It's super easy, too easy to have this conversation. So I want you to introduce Ruben, um, what you're doing with Career Karma, partnering with the Tech Equity Collective.
Yeah, yeah. Do you want to go straight into it or how it was born? Maybe we'll go
Oh
straight
yeah,
into it. We'll go
then
straight
we can
into
then
it.
we can move back
So
around. Yeah.
yeah, so to get together, we're launching something called the Black Genius Academy. The Black Genius Academy is an app that gives an action plan to the people that are listening to the Black Tech Green Money podcast right now, and all over the world that want a career in tech. So you can log into it on your phone or your computer. You can quickly get access to reskilling and upskilling resources, coaching support, and a network of people and organizations that are going to help you navigate your career. So we're actually going to start with 5,000 people, and our ambition is to grow it to hundreds of thousands and eventually millions of people, and have at least 10 other companies in the Tech Equity Collective to train people over the next few years. We're starting with training people in cybersecurity, design, software engineering. But we're also going to be introducing some of the most updated technology training that isn't even taught in college directly to aspiring Black technologists. And so, like you said before, the Black Genius Academy is was created by Career Common and Tech Equity Collective, which is a Google initiative to not only provide funding for skills training, like we talked about before, grow with Google certificates and boot camps, but also give Black people access to a network of companies and organizations that are committed to empowering them throughout their career.
And so you were on stage this last year, 2022, at AfroTech, and this magical thing came out of it as a result of you being at AfroTech. Is that correct?
That's
Not,
right.
it didn't quite go like that.
Go ahead. Say more.
Let me jump in. So one, I do want to start a little bit. I'm going to go back a little bit, right, about like what about Tech Equity
Yeah. Yes,
Collective
please. Let's
being
do that.
an initiative started by Google, right? And we use some words very specifically because that's important. But so TEC in short is a Google initiative to accelerate Black innovation in tech. And so one of the things that we talk less about is representation and really about bringing the innovation, right? We want Black ideas, we want Black design in this tech space. And so we do that by three ways, right? We work with other industry partners, right? So Google, yes, we're starting it, but we want other partners to join us in this work. Another way is that we believe in creating holistic career pathways, right? And so that's really important when we think about the whole Black lived experience. And then we want to like demystify, right?
Yeah.
As you were saying, Will, earlier, we want to demystify this idea of tech and what it takes to make it to and make it through tech. And this really started after the murder of George Floyd, with Googlers coming together that says Google needs to do more, the industry needs to do more, specifically in the area of racial equity and economic empowerment. And so we do believe that like closing the economic empowerment gap is means that we need to widen, right, the opportunity, right, and to also make sure that people are getting the skills that they need. And so when I jumped into this role, there was some heavy hitters in the tech space, Ruben Harris being one of them. And I was like, yo, I got to meet him. Like
Yeah.
TEC, we really do believe in building, not in a silo, but building with people, right? There's dope people on the ground that's already doing amazing work. So how do we amplify or integrate into that work and then work together to incubate new ideas? And so I was like, I got to meet Ruben Harris. So I went, like everybody, I went to careerkarma.com, sent a little email to the info at, I got no reply, right? It's okay. I like hit up Ruben in the DMs and I was like, hey,
Yeah.
you don't know me. I know you in this new role. Let's rap, right? No reply.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, cool, no problem. So I was at AfroTech and I was like, oh, this brother's going to be on the stage. I'm going to position myself.
I
And this
like
was very
that.
quite serendipitous, right? Because I positioned myself in the hallway at AfroTech where everybody was like coming through. And so I'm
Yeah.
just sitting there on my laptop and I was like, I'm going to meet this Ruben guy. I don't know when, I don't know how, but I'm going to meet him. And so he's walking, he's got an entourage,
Yeah.
right? Like a whole entourage, like swag out. And I'm like,
I was there. I
and
saw the
hello.
entourage. I was there. I
Oh
witnessed it.
yeah.
I
So you
witnessed it.
saw it. You went to that. You witnessed entourage. So I'm like, excuse me, pardon me, trying to get through. Just need to talk to Ruben Harris. He stopped. He stops. I was like, introduce myself. And I spit what is Tech Equity Collective, what we're working on. We exchange information, and we jump on the line. Finally, about a week later, and I was like, "Yo, you're a hard person to get to," and so we actually have this conversation. I'm like, "Let's dream, right? Let's
Yeah.
think about what is missing in this space for the Black community." And so we dreamed, right? And what we dreamed together was the Black Genius Academy, right? As Ruben shared, which is our tech career exploration. And so we really, some of the key things that we want to do there is like demystify this industry,
Yeah.
right? Get people in. We want people to be prepared to be like the learners so that they can succeed in a technical education. And I think we want people to have that community, right? Like the beautiful thing that about AfroTech, right, or other spaces is you like, I've got a community. We're growing, building, and figuring out together. And that's also what TEC aspires to be, is just another community in addition to all of the dope things that are happening across the US and beyond, for us to come together to get the tools that we need
Yeah.
so we can all win.
Yeah, that's a better story than the one that I heard.
Yeah. Yeah. I was
Not
like,
see the
I hit him
message.
in the DM. I ain't gonna reply.
No, I love it. I mean, and to be coming up on AfroTech 2023 back in Austin this year. I mean, you just talked about why it's important to be in the room and to be present. You know, because we all get DMs, and you know, my DMs are full of people who want to speak at AfroTech, who want to do stuff, and it just it's hard to keep up. You know, not to help you out, but to help you out, Ruben. I mean, I get it. Like you just, it's hard to filter through what's the noise and what's the
Right.
actual signal through those different channels. And so I'm happy for you guys for putting this really important work together. I did want to ask you, so it's described as a technical career discovery platform that equips aspiring Black talent with the resources, knowledge, and et cetera to identify, enroll, and succeed in technical skills education. I want to talk about that word specifically, the aspiring, because so many of
Mhm.
us don't know enough to aspire to be
Yeah.
in these technical roles. And so I don't know if this is a part of your mission, but how do you also bring awareness also instead of just to the people who are already aspiring?
So if I can take that one, Will, I think you called it out, right? So within Tech Equity Collective, we've got what we say, we got three audiences. We got the tech user, right? And the tech user is the person who's got the technology in their hand, right? Or they're using it every day, and they haven't yet thought about, like, not only can I consume, but I can also build. They haven't thought that far, right? And so we're targeting them, right, to actually get to see themselves and to start to get curious about tech. And then we have what we call the tech curious, right? And so the tech curious audience, they're like, all right, cool. I'm feeling this little tech thing, heard about little Afro tech, right? Like, what's this software engineering? But they're also like, all right, I want to learn more, right? And so they're looking into the educational programs, they're looking into the certificate programs, right? So they're curious and they're acting on this curiosity. And then we have what we call the tech aspiring, right? Who are like, all right, I got the skills. I'm building a community. I'm out here hitting the payment. I'm grinding. Like, put me in, coach, right? Like, help up level me. And so another program that Tech Equity Collective have is called Tech Prep with MLT, Management Leadership for Tomorrow, which is a 4-month career coaching program. And so TEC, we aspire to hit people at all those different pathways, whether you go from a tech user to your tech curious to tech aspiring to when you become that tech professional and then you become that tech executive. But we're zoning in right now on that for Black Genius Academy. We're zoning in on that user and on that tech curious who's like, I never thought about this. Like, I don't know what's out there for me. And so we want to put that in front of them. I mean, when you group them all together, they're all aspiring, right? And I think that even Ruben, he's doing hot stuff. I am, I'm still aspiring, right? Like, we're never at our final destination yet. And so we should all consider ourselves aspirantes. But yeah, but for BGA, we're definitely focused on those who have the tech and are exploring
So,
the possibilities.
yeah, Ruben,
Yeah.
I got something else for you, Ruben. So this, we've been, I mentioned this earlier in this conversation about we've been preaching that, engineering or some sort of technical skill is should be happening even at the elementary or high school level. And ironically, like in the last several months, a lot of companies have been letting go of engineering talent in so many places that we said, oh, this is going to be a safe job, future proof job. Um, so my question for you, because I know you spend a lot of time thinking about certificates and 2-year programs and these sorts of things, professional degrees, are people in those roles most affected by being terminated or let go or being looked over? Okay, or can you demystify those technical certificate degrees and et cetera and their actual career
Yeah. I mean,
opportunities?
I think it's a great question. I think when we think about what's constant in this world, other than death and taxes, it's change, like what we said before. I think that we're transitioning from a four year and 40 model where you maybe go to college for 4 years, which most of the world doesn't go to, and then you work for 40 years and you stay in one job forever, and maybe two or three at most, to the half-life of a skill being 1 to 2 years, and whatever you learned this year might last you at most 4 years, but you need to transition from a mindset of not just reskilling and upskilling, but
Yeah.
continuous skill development. So like when we first started, to your point, it's just like, hey, get access to these rapid reskilling programs that will train you in a year to get you into a job. And let's say software engineering, you get in there and it's going to pay you and you're going to be doing great for a very long time. You can never get comfortable. And one of our guiding principles at Career Karma is always be learning. And so understand the way that you learn, how to get connected to a community of people, how to articulate what you know, how to apply what you know in whatever it is that you want to do. And rather than waiting for that moment, obsess about what's happening within that field so that as new things come out, new techniques come out, you are growing along the way to ask yourself whether you want to stay in that role or shift. So, for example, software engineering, you mentioned it earlier. Like if you're a software engineer and you're not learning what's going on in AI,
Mhm.
that shit's probably gonna sell, right? But it's the same thing in sales, for example. Like on sales, if you are still picking up the phone and dialing and not understanding what's going on with Salesforce or Outreach or Chili Piper or all these other like tools, call center tools that are necessary in order to grow, it's gonna you're going to be left behind. Same thing with HR, right? Back in the day, you just have like just normal manual recruiting and leveraging, nonprofits and for-profits and partnerships, but you have to use tools like Workday and others in order to update yourself in technology. So the long story short, I would say is focus on continuous skill development, the relationships that you need, your learning style, and connecting with the right people that can get you to where you want to go.
Rachelle, one thing that helps our communities is those success stories of people who look like us, come from where we come from, had the experiences that we've had. Talk about how you leverage those success stories, those people who are in tech and have found their way, to help make them relatable to people that you're trying to inspire.
Absolutely. I think it's first it's about variety and diversity of success stories. Is that sometimes people lean on the success stories that seem really nice and glossy, right? Like, oh, I went to this school and I got this degree and I worked at this company, and nah, right? I think at Tech Equity Collective, we're thinking about the diversity of stories, the diversity of experiences that got you there, right? We're thinking about people who don't necessarily have that traditional 4-year degree background. We're thinking about people who might have grown up, like I think one brother we brought to the stage when we were at another event. This brother was homeless, right? Like this brother was homeless, coding in his car, right? Like another, we have other sisters who never touched college, right? But like now they're excelling as program managers and engineers. And so we want people to truly step outside of their own limitations, right, to see themselves there. So when we think about success stories, we're thinking about people who have worked in big tech, people who have started tech companies, people who have worked for black led tech companies. We're thinking about people who did boot camps, people who went to community colleges. We're thinking about people who are self-taught. And so we feel that there is a responsibility to identify stories of people who who have just explored all the different pathways. And so how we pull those stories is we pull those stories from people who are doing our programs, people who are working with our partners such as a Career Karma or a Black Ambition or other organizations that we support. We do that by asking. We keep it 100 with people in our program. So I think another thing about TEC, it's also about mindset shifting as well. When you think about these programs, is like we're shifting people's mindsets from saying I can't to like maybe I can to I darn sure can, right? And so that's important. So those are the stories that we're building, we're pulling out. And I think lastly, it's so easy to pull out stories of people who came in with super confidence, who were like, I knew I was going to be great. I was going to be great the day I like came out the womb. No, we want people who are like, I didn't know, I was afraid, right? I didn't think I had it, right? So that they can also show them the evolution in their mindset, the evolution in their learning, and the evolution in building the community that they now have that help get them there.
One more thing that I wanted to add to your other questions you asked me is that there was a name that we used to, that at least I personally was playing with for Career Karma before it existed, which kind of highlights um, the community and the mentor and the coaching side of things. And you'll know why I didn't choose this when I say it. It was social security, right? So when you think about like job security, it's not necessarily even in your skills or, what you actually know how to do or what you've done on your resume. It's your network, right? So like because you have such a strong network of people, and I can like hey, be like, hey Will, I'm ready to drop something, and I know you got the platform. I could just text you, and it's like it's done deal,
Yeah.
ready. So like once you have that community of people that got your back, you got that job security or that security for whatever it is that you want to do in the future, whether that's raising money or building whatever it is that you want to do. So that is something else to keep in
No,
mind.
let's do it. Let's do it. I think about so often when we are starting to acquire or thinking about starting to acquire technical skills. Ruben, I'll start with you on this. So often there's this an unsurety about where to start. So if you think about 5 years ago, the conversation was about machine learning, and then it was about blockchain, and then it went from blockchain to generative AI. So now it, but like it's like the ball is constantly moving, and me coming in the game, like, what do I want to do when I come? But every time I get settled on something, the puck is somewhere else. How do you have that conversation for people who are you are trying to encourage? So like lean into that desire to get technically skilled, um, when it's such a volatile conversation.
I think now that employers are all over the world are prioritizing skills first initiatives, I think it's important for individuals that are seeking training to align with job training programs that are getting directly informed by the skills that employers are looking for. So what I mean by that is
Yeah, yeah,
because if you, to your point, sign up for a 2 year or a 4 year program, by the time you're done with the program, the world's
yeah, yeah,
different,
yeah.
right? So that's just, and if you are going to be signing up to a 2 year, 4 program, to make it very clear, like I'm not anti-college, try to be doing internships or some type of work experience where your own side project on the own where you can apply it in the real world so that you are making sure that whatever it is that you're doing year by year or every 6 months is aligned with what the customer and employers are demanding.
You want to chime in on that,
Yeah.
Michelle?
I think so yes, plus one to that. My thought is also it goes back to mindset, right? Like we have to be agile thinkers. And I think that so it's not only about like the programs, right? But just and having a clear understanding of how the world of tech works. So many times in the Black community, we are on the peripheral, right? We're on the outside because we don't know the inner workings, right? We're like, okay, so I just got the machine learning, I got this down, this is it. But if you don't have the inside knowledge of how this industry is working, right, and the agility and the volatility that is just present and required, then you won't know how to adjust. And so I think that what we aim to do with Black Genius Academy is not just get you ready for the skill and for the job, but to get your mindset ready to become a hungry learner, to become incredibly curious, to become confident in yourself, that when the game changes, you can change with the game, right? And I think that there are just those skills, whether you want to call them soft skills or mindset skills, that our community needs to keep up, right? And sometimes what I notice is that, like, we get flustered. We're like, oh my gosh, I can't do it. Well, you could do anything you
Yeah.
put your mind to, but your mind's got to be right. And so that, I think that's something that we're also focused on as well.
And so often in our community, and the people that you're targeting, they're the first and might be the only in their community, their family, their neighborhood that is getting these skills and getting this kind of exposure. How do you build those wraparounds so they're supported?
Mhm. That's a great question. I think that, so one way is, I think everybody wants to network with the Rubens and the Wills of the world, right? Like, Rubens, Wills, y'all are busy, right? You should build your network and community with the people who are right alongside you, trying to learn with you, right? Who are in the trenches together. And so we don't necessarily need to always look up to people. We could just look to our left and right. And so I think that's one way, right? The people who are growing with you are there. When in Tech Equity Collective, when we think about holistic, right? Let's just keep it real. Being Black in America can be really hard, right? And so it's not just going out here and be like, I'm going to apply for a job and I'm going to get educated. No, you still got to deal
Yeah.
with some biases, some prejudices, some rules and policies that are attacking you and your family. And so we do think about, we think about mindfulness. We bring that into the conversation, mindfulness. When we, and some other, our other programs, we're thinking, we have wellness sessions, right? And we're talking about how to take care of your person when you are hitting the pavement and trying to find that new role, or where you're, really powering through a certain technical course. I think where we can, we want to be able to provide some financial relief. So a part of Black Genius Academy, for those who complete the academy, they will have an opportunity to apply for a full scholarship to go to a software engineering boot camp or cybersecurity boot camp, as well as apply for to get access to certification programs. And so we know that financial barriers are also real, and so we're thinking about that as well. And then I think the last thing is that we're bringing in a slew of other partners, right? So as I stated earlier, TC, Google, we do not believe that we can do this work alone. We actually know that we cannot do this work alone. And so this is a call to our industry partners, to other organizations, to come help us amplify this work and provide the tools to this community. Are we going to get it perfect? No. Are there going to be some areas that we, may miss? But that's also the beauty of what we're doing, because we're like, well, tell us, right? We want to hear. This is truly built for you, by you. But I think to start, it's community building and making sure that we're getting people some form of financial relief.
And just to piggyback on that, and I'll speak from my own perspective, is that she mentioned when the game changes, you got to change with the game, right? So we're at a place where student
She's had a couple
loans
bars, by the way.
are.
A couple bars.
She said so many bars, bro. I had to. You see, I had to say it again. That was too fire, right? When the game changes, you got to change with the game. In case you didn't hear, you got to play defense and offense, right? Like Kodak said. But like when you when you hear something like that, and student loans are like in the 1.8 trillions, and people are talking about student loan forgiveness. Don't sleep on what she just said. We're transitioning into a world of also employer funded education, employer provided training, like employers embracing skills first initiatives, which didn't exist before. When Career Commons was first, I mean, tuition reimbursement has existed. This is different than tuition reimbursement. She's saying there's options where they will pay for the education. That is very different than like deferred tuition or income share agreement. And there's other employers that are in the Tech Equity Collective that are also thinking about this. So again, this is a Google initiative that is bigger, that is bringing not just other for-profit organizations, but also nonprofits like MLT and others that are mission driven, have the same goal, but we're not working together, and Career Compass wants to be the glue for it. So that's what Black Genius Academy is bringing together for you guys.
So, lastly, I'm gonna let both of you chime in on this. I'll let you go first, Ruben. The How do you measure success? And I want you to answer this two different ways. One from a business perspective, like maybe it's inputs and outputs or whatever, however you want to do that. But also, what does it mean to you? Because there's a reason you do this work when you could be doing all sorts of other kinds of work. And so, like your true north, how does this how does this find success? Where you at the end of the day you'll be like, that was worthy.
It's a good question. Um, it's a great question because I want to help 1 billion people in 10 years. And so I can give you like the technical answers of, how many people are active in their action plans and how many people actually completed the program and how many people are signed up to courses and even how many people are eventually going to get jobs. But what we're doing is bigger than jobs. What we're doing is bigger than starting companies. Success to me is not only all of those things that I just mentioned, but for people to have the tools and the skills to realize and manifest their purpose into this world and make the world a better place. That's success to me. But it's also all the other things I said too.
Michelle.
Yes, I agree. I mean, so our North Star at Tech Equity Collective is to double the number of Black engineers in the world. And so, but I think what Ruben said, yes, we want to make sure within the next couple of months of launching, we want to get 5,000 learners on and completed through the academy. Um, but when I really think about like what success means, success for me is, and I say this all the time, within our TEC doors is I want no Black person to ever have imposter syndrome. It's not a real thing. It shouldn't be a real thing in our community. The amount of tenacity, persistence, grit, and just scrappiness necessary for us to thrive and excel in any industry, including in tech. Um, when we get the education, when we get the skills, when we build the community, and when we eventually get the roles, whether we build them ourselves, right? Whether we go to companies that were built by us, like there's a number of ways to enter in the tech ecosystem. But when we get there, we have the true confidence that we belong there and we have everything it takes to excel and to thrive and to be impactful, not just for ourselves and our families, not just for our community, but for the world. um, and so for me, that's what success looks like when like Black people were coming in and we're like, yep, I'm supposed to be here. So yeah.
Hey, Ruben and Michelle, always a pleasure.